Well, hello there, YouTube. It's Ro here. Thank you for visiting You Grow Ro. If this is your first time here, I hope you'll consider subscribing at the end of this video. If you've been here before, thank you so much for coming back. I appreciate you. Today, we're going to be talking recipes. I only got a few, but they're garden to table, and I don't think you've heard of these before. Let me show you what I got in just a second. So every year, us gardeners, we grow as much food as we can in our spaces. We try to get the most production we can from our soil. We grow so many tomatoes and herbs and peppers and eggplants and squash and everything else. And we find all kinds of ways of preserving, from freezing to dehydrating to canning, using right away, freeze drying, you name it. We do all of that stuff. Um, but, but, I am kind of sick of, maybe not sick of, I'm kind of over some of these more common recipes, right? Like we all do crushed tomatoes, we all do sauce, we all do um, different herbal seasonings and whatnot. But I got some recipes today that I'm planning on growing specific things for so that I can give these a try. These are not your common recipes, so go ahead, grab a piece of paper. Trust me, you're going to want to check these out. Now, I'm not saying that all those recipes for, our favorite sauce or even our herbal seasonings are bad, but in any way, I'm not saying that. In fact, I have a video on different herbs and spices that I've grown for myself and I keep in my pantry. I'll link to that up here. But these are recipes that I just don't see anybody talking about. Now, half of these I've already known about, I just never got around to doing. And this year, I'm doing them. Okay, so first up is white paprika. Have you heard of this? Yes, listen here. Some time ago, I was researching the types of peppers that I wanted to grow, and somewhere along the line, I came across some information about how African American people, Black folks in the Chesapeake Bay area, were growing the fish pepper and using that to make a white paprika sauce, right? So, and then they were using that white paprika sauce for seafood dishes. This was back in the 30s now. So, fish peppers have variegated leaves, which already means I'm partial to them because I just love a variegated leaf. I don't know about you. And the peppers ripen from white to red, which is different from your standard green to red. They have a wide range of pungency, so probably depending on your growing conditions and watering, etc., harvest time, you'll get different pungency from them. But of course, like any other pepper, the white pepper can be dried, and therefore, I have it in my mind that I can concoct a white paprika powder from them. All I got to do is channel my ancestors, and off I go. Now, this next recipe I've mentioned a number of times. And by the way, obviously, well, it may not be obvious because I've only talked about one recipe so far, but by using the word recipe, I'm using that loosely. I'm not giving you guys like specific ingredients and measurements and all that stuff. I'm just telling you, in general, what I plan on doing. So, okay, recipe, loosely used. Okay. All right. So, my next recipe is for, and I've mentioned this before a number of times, white sauce, like a white marinara. And I'm not talking about like a white wine sauce or an Alfredo or anything like that. I'm talking about like a white pasta sauce, a sauce that's made, well, a white and white, also loosely termed. It's really going to probably end up being more like a cream or an eggshell type of color. Definitely not pus, like I said the last time, because who wants to eat pussy sauce? Anywho, But I'm talking about a white sauce made from white tomatoes, white peppers, white carrots, sweet onions or white onions, white paprika that I'm going to make from my white fish peppers, garlic cloves, white pepper, salt, olive oil, and then your standard fresh basil, oregano, parsley, whatever. If you add other things in, red pepper flakes or nutritional yeast or what have you, whatever it is that you use. I want to make a sauce that mostly looks opposite from red. I want to give that a try. I did make a sauce um, accidentally. I don't know. It was probably 5 years ago. I wanted to have like a rainbow of tomatoes, and then I made my sauce from it, and it came out like muddy brown, and my brain hated it. The sauce tasted fine, but I just aesthetically, I could not get past that brown. So I'm gonna screw with my brain a little bit this time, but on purpose, and try to make a kind of a Alfredo looking sauce, but it's gonna taste like your red marinara. Should be pretty good. I'm excited for that one too. Actually, I'm excited for all of these. Let me know down in the comments if any of these recipes seem to be tickling your fancy at all. Next up, I want to make my own homemade pepper seasoning. Now, to be clear, I know that peppercorns can be grown on plants. The problem is I can't grow them here unless I grow them or I overwinter them indoors because I don't have a long enough season for those. They require a much longer growing season than I have here in Ohio Zone 6B. But one day I was enjoying a nice peppery um, radish. And I thought to myself, if the end times were here and getting black pepper proved to be problematic, I could probably grow some radishes, dehydrate them, grind them up, and turn them into a peppery powder. But then I was like, hold on. I went a little bit further because I started thinking, isn't there something else that's really peppery that I could put in this pepper seasoning? And then that's when it hit me, nasturtiums. So there I was with my idea, thinking I was all original, and halfway I was up until I invited the idea of the nasturtium because I went and looked it up, did a little research, and what do you know? Back in the day, they used to roast nasturtium seeds and then grind them up and use them as pepper. Now, the only thing original to me is that I thought of adding the radish, and specifically the black Spanish radish, because obviously it would then look like black pepper. So I want to make my own pepper seasoning, and I cannot wait. Miss Shirley O.G. Gardner doesn't call me the mad scientist for no reason. I think I mentioned in one of my most recent videos, and it was where I walked you guys through that guided brain dump session. And I was telling you, like, oh, my brain is always running, always, always, always. And this is the kind of thing that ends up in there, jumbled around somewhere. And that's why I have to write things down all the time, because if you had all these fantastic ideas all the time, I can't keep up with them. That's why I do the brain dump. But that was one of my ideas, and I think that's going to be spectacular. What do you think? Next up, I talked about this a few years ago and I didn't do it, but I think I'm going to go ahead and do it this year because, well, let me tell you what it is first. It's called Poor Man's Capers. And like I said, I mentioned this before many years back, and I never got around to it. But this year, I'm going to attempt to grow an obscene amount of nasturtiums, in which case I should have plenty enough seeds for collecting, making the pepper seasoning I was just talking about, and for making the poor man's capers. Now, if you don't know, capers are these small, round, salty flower buds used as like a seasoning or a garnish, and they're usually in a brine and a jar. And I know what you're thinking. Well, you're growing everything else. Why don't you just grow your own capers too? Well, I thought of that. Surprise. But come to find out, the only way I would be able to grow them is if I went into overwintered them indoors, and I refuse. I think I already mentioned this. I refuse to grow peppers or peppercorns too, because I'm not overwintering stuff in my house. Nothing bigger than, like, say, a small cutting of a coleus or some variegated oregano or something like that. At any rate, so the Cape plants, they require dry and hot arid climates of strong sunlight to thrive. Therefore, capers are only hardy to zones, what is it, 9 through 11. Now, poor man's capers are pretty simple to make. You just harvest the seeds when they're green, and then you either want to lacto ferment them in salt and water, which I've said before, and I actually have several videos on different things that I've lacto fermented. I love lacto fermented foods. Or you can pickle them in salt, vinegar, water, maybe add some peppercorns, garlic, or whatever, what have you. And that's it. That's all you need to do. So, whatever I decide to do, though, I'm looking forward to trying those out big time. Poor man's capers. Look it up. Next up for you, I got Beet Kvass. Now, kvass is a fermented beverage. Oh, look at that. Something else fermented that I want to try. I actually had okay, so Beet Kvass had originated in Europe, and it's made usually from rye bread, water, yeast, and sometimes they add some fruit or something for like a sweetness and a flavor. It's also commonly made from beets. It has like a sweet tart taste to it. So most recently, I made a fruit kvass at home, and it was super simple, surprisingly tasty. I didn't think it was going to be as good as it was, but it was. It was pretty darn good, especially since I used like four different fruits in it. I had, I think, apple. I want to say apple, maybe a navel orange, peach, and a kiwi or something. It was just some random fruit that I had sitting around, and I was like, let's try it. And you throw in some sea salt and some water and let it ferment, and boom, you got a drink. And being that it's fermented, it does have probiotic benefits. And you could add other ingredients to sweeten the kvass, although I most likely will not, but you could, because it does have a slight tart taste as well. So finding a kvass recipe online is about like shooting fish in a barrel. It, there's a million recipes online. If you're interested in doing this, growing your own beets, but then finding a recipe to make your own beet kvass, just look it up online, Google it or Joogle it. Where did I hear that at? I don't know. Moving on. Next up is pickled banana peppers. I don't know that too many other people do this. At least I don't hear anybody in my circle talking about it all that frequently. But this was requested to me by my other half. Now Tim was like, "This year you got to make those peppers like you get at Subway." And he's talking about those pickled banana peppers that you get at Subway, or better yet, any other real deli in the world. And I'm willing to give it a try, and I don't think we would need that many of them, because mostly I can't think of what else we use them for besides like roast beef sandwiches. And then I do make a Mississippi pop roast when he requests it, and that takes the pickled banana peppers as well. So all I need to do is grow a few jars worth, and then I think we would be set for a whole year, and that's easy enough to do. Plus, he rarely asks for anything from the garden, so I'm going to see what I can do to make that happen for him. It would just make his day. And then I only have one more thing for you here. And I heard about this last year. I did it, but I didn't do it in the amount that I should have. And that is canned Rotel. Now, like I said, I've made this before, but I only made the one jar. And I was hesitant at the time because I just couldn't see how it could be as good as the store-bought stuff that you buy at the grocery. And I mean, of course, you know where the ingredients come from, and you know how they're grown and how they're processed. But sometimes, and I'm saying it, y'all can come for me, I don't care. Homegrown products don't hit the same way that they do from the store. And I know we're conditioned to think that. I'm not saying we're not, and they're not supposed to. Things that we grow from home aren't supposed to taste like the things that they, you know, process at a plant somewhere, right? But like sometimes it hits different, but in a bad way. And I just had the feeling that the canned Rotel was going to be the same thing. Well, it was better than I expected. That one little jar was better than I expected. Now, I have some notes on how I would change up the recipe, And the recipe I followed was from Sutton's Days. I was just telling Gina that her channel is Gina versus Gina. She was saying she wanted to do canned rotel, and I told her where I got my recipe from. Now, Sutton's Days, she actually used a home preservation approved recipe that she modified. And I think the original recipe was a salsa recipe, and she modified it using very common and approved alternatives or substitutions. And so if you were worried about not following an approved recipe, don't worry. This one definitely is. So this recipe should alleviate any concerns you would have. And again, that's canned rotel by Sutton's Days. So there you have it, guys. What do you think? Aren't those like some very interesting recipes? That's 7 recipes that you probably haven't made already. Okay, maybe you did the pickled banana peppers, but I guarantee you didn't do the white paprika or the white marinara or the homemade pepper seasoning or the poor man's capers. I guarantee you didn't do those things. But I'm going to be giving these a try this year, provided all of these vegetables come through for me like I hope they do. All right, guys, I hope you got some ideas. I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, don't forget to hit the like button, share, subscribe, and I will see you guys in another video on another day. Until then, happy growing, my friends.